Whenever something like what happened this morning happens, there are always a lot of questions. Why and what can be done to prevent it?
And joining us to discuss those questions is Sam Rosenberg. He has a company called Impacts, an Academy of Personal Protection. And part of what his company does is to train school personnel on how to handle critical situations like those that happened this morning at Franklin Regional. Your assessment of what happened, even though we don't have all the facts in yet, but your assessment of what you know so far.
Well, I mean, this is a pretty standard situation. When you look at incidences of workplace violence, terrorism, or even schools, these things are hardly unpredictable at this point. In my opinion, most incidences of violence, no one ever just snaps. And most incidences of violence are as predictable and observable as boiling water if you know what elements to look for. School violence being particularly relevant in that case. There are always these pre-incident indicators, and I think we're going to find that there were plenty of them here in this type of situation.
You said you were stuck in traffic outside of Franklin Regional this morning. How did you feel when you saw what was going on? Because this is your area of expertise.
Even someone like me who's spent the greater part of my life studying violence, dealing with helping people manage violence, seeing the ambulances racing away from the scene, knowing that there were casualties inside, was quite honestly heart-wrenching, as a father, as well as a professional who tries to make an impact in this way.
Let's talk a little bit, if we can, about the fact that the student apparently used a knife or two knives instead of a gun. Normally, these situations, it's a gun that's used.
Yeah. So in this type of situation, you can look at three possibilities, in my opinion, what come to mind. The first thing is probably a limited degree of access. So in other words, had he had the availability to get a gun, he probably would have used a firearm. So maybe he didn't have access. The other component might be that he wanted a degree of sensationalism. Knife stabbings, multiple mass homicide stabbings, with a knife occur in other countries quite often where there are no access to firearms. So it's not a new process, a new phenomena, but it's relatively new in this country. So he may have been looking for the novelty of that to get some more notoriety. There are other elements that are at play as well.
A lot of times there are questions about whether TV, movies may play a role in triggering some of this.
There's no question that it does. Media violence, whether it's movies, television, or even video games, are significant impacts, have significant impacts, and are significant elements here. One of my associates brought to my attention that there was a TV show last week called The Following that depicted a mass knife attack. This is not uncommon in this type of situation where you have this direct copycat effect where here's someone who's standing on the precipice who feels justified in his actions, doesn't feel like he has any alternatives to violence. He's become sort of tunneled in that way, and he sees this type of drama unfold on television and says, this is what I want to do.
Two quick questions, if we can. The first of which I'll ask now, and that is, in your estimation, the response by the school personnel and even the other students inside here, was this something?
It's unbelievable. It's phenomenal. Now most people don't believe that we as ordinary citizens can do anything in this type of situation. And first of all, we're seeing that the perpetrator was brought down by another student, a vice principal, as well as a professional security guard. In my business, we always talk about that there are no lifeguards. You have to know how to swim. And in this type of situation, this is exactly what my firm does, is we teach faculties how to manage these situations from the standpoint of if you can't run and you can't hide, you have to be able to fight back, and we give them the tools to do so. This is a perfect example of people getting the job done without any training. It's absolutely phenomenal, and the entire crisis response was excellent.
All right, Sam, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon on KDKA-TV News at 4 and
thanks for having me.
Sharing your insights. Thank you.
My pleasure.